Hi there! You're invited to listen to an exclusive excerpt from the next episode that I'll be publishing on Sunday. My next guest is absolutely fascinating, and this is just a teaser of what you can expect from our discussion. Enjoy listening, and I'll see you on Sunday for the full episode.
Welcome to FinScale, a podcast created by Solène Niederkorn, shedding light on innovation in finance, banking, and insurance.
Understanding climate risk with a business approach. Lukky Ahmed, CEO and co-founder of ClimateX.
When we talk about physical risk specifically and driving, what do they do with it and what do they want to do with it? Ultimately, it has to anchor to one of those things. And so what we've really managed to do, because of the way that we think about the problem statement, is go beyond the physical risk as being the focus of the conversation, which then pushes us up on the agenda in terms of the value that we bring to our customers, which it actually gets them to want to integrate us into their businesses.
The topic of climate risk is one that deeply concerns me, as it does many individuals I engage with. In the financial world, it's a subject that's perceived in vastly different ways depending on whom you speak to. I was keen to have this conversation because ClimateX's method strikes me as pragmatic, sensible, and attuned to business realities, a rarity in the climate risk analysis arena. Lukky, the CEO of ClimateX, is an intriguing figure with a profound grasp of his field. He has consistently impressed me since our initial meeting. Our discussion delves into their business methodology and the development of their Spectra model, an impressive and user-friendly tool. We explore how this UK-based startup achieves global reach in providing climate risk data by fusing scientific research with econometrics to produce comprehensive climate risk analytics. I assure you, the conversation is not just enlightening, but genuinely captivating. Enjoy the show. Hi, everyone. Hi, Lukky.
Hi, good to meet you.
Yeah, great to have you on the podcast. Really happy to dive into what you're building. It's been a while that we had planned the discussion, but then we finally found a date, which has been postponed again. But now we are here for recording. Thank you for your time. Can I ask you to introduce yourself to the listeners and tell a bit more about where you come from and your journey until now?
Yeah, sure thing. So firstly, thanks for having me. I've listened to a lot of the podcasts and they've been really good and interesting and insightful. So I am a fan of the show. Also, I guess just in terms of my background and introductions. So my name is Lukky. I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called ClimateX. Prior to founding this company, I spent a decade of my career working within the banking space, within risk specifically. And I did a lot of operational, transformational type work in the regulatory compliance space. And then I had a big business turnaround that I had to lead for HSBC in Turkey. And then I spent a couple of years in Hong Kong between 2015 and 17, actually, building the entire stress testing operating model across the whole APAC region for wholesale credit risk. So the part of the bank that lends to corporates, banks, FIs, there's some trade risk, market risk type work in there as well. So that was a bit of a baptism of fire, but taking a lot of these external macroeconomic shocks and applying it to the balance sheet and P&L of the bank and all the clients that we used to lend to, and understand what that meant from a financial point of view, and then turn that into business strategy, you turn that into pricing, into product, and so on. 2017, after nearly a decade at HSBC, I remember somebody told me that it's really, really cool that I've climbed the ladder and the tower of HSBC. The universe exists inside the hexagon. What a wonderful opportunity. And I think that became my jump off point to say, no, the universe does not belong inside a hexagon or in any particular logo. And I know that empowers a lot of people, but in my case, actually did quite the opposite. And so in 2017, I left Hong Kong, left HSBC. I didn't have a plan, but I knew I wanted to work on something that I would build, and that's something I didn't know what it was. So I moved to London, went into consulting. So I didn't plan to do that. I was headhunted, supported one of the major European mortgage providers in stress testing initially. So the Bank of England stress test and understanding those shocks to the retail mortgage book, and then moving across into various other projects and programs. With finance, we're pulling their hair out because something was happening in the bank somewhere. It was hitting the P&L and they didn't understand it. And so my job was to sort of get my arms around that and really start to anticipate those risks and those challenges and the financial impacts and drive that through the business. So and that's where I met my co-founder, Camille, who was on the quant side, really building these models and throwing the numbers over to me to make sense of. Mm-hmm. So that's where things started. So even when I start to describe that, I guess, in terms of the type of work I've been involved in on the banking side, it's probably not very difficult to then see a connection between that world of taking these macroeconomic shocks and applying it to the balance sheet and P&L of the bank and our clients to looking at something more existential. Effectively, that's what happened was in 2020, we really, really wanted to understand, because climate change as a problem was becoming more visible, I guess, just generally, people were becoming more aware of it. And my interest was in the fact that, well, hang on, the physical climate risk, so something that's already happening and we're experiencing it, these wildfires, these floods and storms and so on. What happens if that directly affects a building that I own or I'm lending against? The value will change of that asset if it's flooded. So how do I think about that in terms of my loss exposure? What happens if I'm lending to a business and the business has a key distribution center that is completely flooded? Well, they can't get goods and services in and out. What does that mean, right? And so how do they respond to that? What does that mean for the credit profile of that institution? And so all of that becomes really quite an existential risk that nobody was pricing. And I wanted data, really good quality, defensible data that I could use for the purposes of the similar types of work I was doing elsewhere, but within the banking sphere. And that's what we ended up saying. It doesn't exist in the market. We couldn't find data that we as practitioners would want to use because the governance and transparency wasn't there. And we went down this rabbit hole to understand the problem statement. And wind the clock forward, we've now, I guess, established Climate X as one of the leading players in the physical risk market. So we're incredibly proud of the progress that we made so far.
Now that you've heard an excerpt from the upcoming episode on Sunday, make sure you stay tuned and connected so you don't miss a beat.